All right.
Hi, people.
Welcome to the
Hi.
gaming etiquette panel. I almost couldn't say etiquette there.
So the hardest part is out of the way.
That's it. I believe this is our last panel for the con, so just keep it relaxed, no stress. This will just be what everyone remembers us ending on.
Oh, yay.
Oh, no pressure.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah. But anyway, I figure we'll start with just introducing ourselves and kind of letting the people watching know who you are and what you do. And if you guys can see the list on the left side of who's in the call, we'll just go in that order so that you don't have to keep wondering.
Okay.
That's fine.
So that's me first?
That would
Question
be
mark? Okay, cool. I'm just making sure. Hi, everyone. I'm B. I am 20 years old. I am the Dungeon Master. Well, I was the Dungeon Master of the Frostwalkers podcast. Now I'm a player because new campaign. Woo! And yeah, I've been enjoying the con. We did a really fun live show earlier in the week, and now I'm here.
awesome.
Can you tell how pre-programmed my intro?
That's all right. Mine is the opposite of that because I didn't know preparation. I am next in the list. I am Noctur. I'll be moderating the panel. I am with the Nerd Asylum, I guess, as a staff member, and I'm on one of our podcasts, the Cloudy one, and that's about it for me. I don't have a whole lot going on. Noir, you're next.
Hi guys, I'm Jay from Ajax Studios. My gamer tag is Nora Labyrinth. If you guys have any questions about video games and the Nintendo Switch, I'm your person. I am the marketing and public relations coordinator for our third-party Nintendo company. If you guys have any questions, come by after the chat.
Nice.
Hi, I'm Robert the GM. I am part of the Not Quite Heroes podcast. I'm Gail. It comes in the night there. I also do lots of different streamed role-playing games. I run my own 5e game. I play in a Monster Hearts game. So you can find me kind of all over Twitch playing role-playing games and on Not Quite Heroes.
Hi, I'm Vinny the Troll with Whirlwind of Gaming. I am one of their dungeon masters and also support video gamer for Crimson. I've been doing TTRPGs for probably longer than most of you guys have been alive. So yeah.
That's probably a fair assumption.
I don't know what you mean.
It means that we have a lot of younger people coming in and getting into TTRPGs, and that's a good thing. Yeah. It'll keep it alive.
Oh, yes.
All right. So I wanted to start by asking what everyone's number one rule at the table is. Well, or digitally, when you get together to play your games, what is your personal number one thing that you try to focus on when you're playing? And we can go in the same order, or if you just want to chime in, feel free.
Okay. If anyone else wants to go first, go on ahead. I know I'm not gonna hoard the first spot. I don't.
Sure, I'll take the first one. I think definitely the biggest thing, and sometimes it's an unspoken rule, but especially with newer people or people less familiar with how role playing games, let people have their scenes. There's a lot of kind of instinct to try and when something cool is happening to be a part of it, but there's also a lot of times what's best for the story and what's best for everyone personal story is just step back, let that person have their moment, let them have that emotional beat, that cool like killing blow, whatever. So it's really, really important at my table, I think, when I GM, just let the person have their moment, even if that means you're not doing anything cool.
Yeah, that's a very important one, I feel.
I think this is one that's a bit more codified. I've been trying. It's kind of an unspoken rule at my table, but I've been trying to make it spoken. Is the use of the X card. Just and the ramifications of that. Just the idea that, hey, I want to talk to you guys before the game starts about what you're comfortable with, what you want this game to be about, and it's something I do. I like talking, so asking people what they want their characters to go through is second nature for me. Um, but if at any point someone's just like, even just messages me like, "Hey, can we skip a scene?" Like, I I've never taken offense to that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. For me, that's just been something I've always been able to just be like, "Oh yeah, sure, no problem whatsoever." And we're out of this part, and we're into this next part. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's another really important rule, making sure everyone is comfortable at the table.
Yeah.
In games that I run, everybody's there to have fun, and I see it as a group effort. So I try to avoid PvP. Um, it's not a competition between me and the players or the players themselves. I said. So I just right off the top of the bat, it's no PvP. If you have a problem with each other, we can talk it out and work it out. But we're not gonna have our characters attacking each other just because you find it fun or want to get revenge for something uh, perceived.
I think that's a pretty strong one as well. Yeah. You don't want to create that rift between people or like, oh, but, I won the last battle, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah, no, it just gets so uncomfortable and awkward.
Yeah.
For me, when I was jamming and storytelling, my big thing is try not to have personal conflicts outside of game come into game. I don't care if you're my partner, my best friend, or somebody I'm meeting for the first time and jamming for you. If you guys have conflicts with me outside of game, they stay outside of game.
That's also very important. All very good rules. So, oh man, I had a follow up. We'll just move on. I can't remember my follow up question. So are there any like kind of special rules with like electronic devices, engagement that you guys try to bring with you or let your players be aware of that, personally like, hey, cell phones are kind of a no-no, like try and be here in the moment. And if there are, and you've had to, engage with the player after an incident, wow, I just had a major like brain fog. And you've had to engage with the player after an incident. How did you handle that?
Um, I can actually take this one because I have a bit of a story. Uh, the Before the podcast, the first group I ever DM'd with was a group of high school friends, and the second time I ever ran for that group, someone was actively on YouTube during the session, and they were just, in hindsight, I realized they were upset because we were upset at them because we had planned this game for 3 weeks and they came saying, "Oh, I know what my character is, but I don't know how to make one. So can you two do it for me?" Pointed at me and my friend, and we just made one for them 5 minutes before the game started. So we were like a little upset. And I think they picked up on that energy and just decided to say, "Well, I did nothing wrong, so I'm gonna actively spite the DM by playing YouTube videos during the game." And when we asked them to stop, they played it louder. So after that session, me and my friends kind of cornered them. We're like, "Hey, what's going on here? Because that wasn't cool at all." And they kind of played it off. We were all in high school, so we really didn't have a good grasp of gaming etiquette yet. This was our first table together, and they just kind of played it off, said we were all being mean to him, and left. And then at that point, I kind of was like, that wasn't fun. I didn't enjoy that experience at all. And so that's when I kind of made the move to finding a new group, and that's how the podcast came to be. So uh, at the table now, I'm usually, because we're all are online, it's kind of, I kind of don't have as much of a problem with it because I can't see their faces. They're not actively, you know what I mean? But my group of players are usually very good at like being engaged in the story. And we use online stuff for like rolling and apps for spells and things like that, but you know, just communication. If someone messages us saying like, "Hey, I'm getting a phone call," they'll usually message us and say, "Hey, I have to take this," and then we'll pause the session. You know what I mean? Just like being open to that communication to me is what's most important.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also where this kind of stems from is player engagement. Like, is everyone engaged in the story in this game? Because in like maybe a board, some board games where there's everyone has a long turn and everyone's turn doesn't really impact your turn as much. Sometimes you can just check out, scroll through social media during it. But during role playing games, right? This is a story you're all telling together, where they're not you're in the scene. So for me, I'm never, because also I have some friends have like ADHD who like need to be doing something at all times to stay like on and like be checked in. So if someone needs to have a phone open or like be fidgeting with something to stay engaged, then that's fine by me. For me, it's a question of, if you're on your phone just like not paying attention, and then I'm like, hey, what do you do, or like, what are you doing, you say, what, huh? That's when less I'll say, "Hey, get off your phone." More so for me, I'm like, "Why aren't you engaged? Is this, are you not interested in like the level of role play versus combat we're doing? Do you not feel invested in your character?" And sometimes people are just not appreciative of the game that you're playing. But for the most part, I find there's some kind of barrier there that just through talking out with the player is just like, so what's kind of the barrier between you and being engaged right now?
Hmm.
I think I think everything's been covered um, about the point about some people may have attention problems, and others are using their devices for tools and apps. Um, Thankfully, I don't have a problem with that online because again, there's a disconnect. I think, but in person, my groups are usually pretty good, and we're respective of each other and accepting of our flaws because we've been playing for 20 years, so we get used to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it was kind of the opposite at my table when I was jamming and storytelling for my friends. We kind of had to use apps and stuff because we were in a classroom. We were using a classroom, so we didn't really have a normal table, quote unquote, to play at. So we were using Roll20 on our phones. We were using our phones to get most of the stuff done. And I'm so sorry for the background noise. I have family coming over at the second that I didn't realize that they all came at the same time. Um, but we had to use a lot of tech, and I also had to use a screen reader, so it kind of made it a little interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, more and more people are going to start using technology, laptops and tablets, phones to keep track of things for them. I think the issue comes when you can tell that they're not engaged, and you guys hit on it really well. Communication. I think that's going to be what most of this boils down to, is just communicate with your players. Moving on, what do you guys feel are the three like pillars of gaming etiquette? What are the capstones, the most important parts for you to consider when you're trying to be a good player or DM?
I think communication is just the biggest top pillar, and I don't think that's going to be very different for everyone. Obviously, for me, another big one is that the GM is also a player, right? Keeping in mind that the person who is running the game is also putting work, but is also like invested in these characters and is excited to play these things out. They're not just running the game for you all; they're also running the game for themselves. They're also trying to have fun and play this game with their friends. And I think the final one is just treating everyone with respect, right? Just the idea that even though, sometimes players can be rivals or the GM is throwing enemies at you, and that role play can get super tense, that no matter what, these are at least hopefully all your friends. These are people you're telling a story with, having fun with. So being respectful. So communication, GM is also a player, and then just respecting your fellow players.
I want to piggyback a little bit off of the communication thing because that's definitely one of mine. The GM being a player one, definitely, I would agree with as well. And I think for me, the third one that I would be different. I'm sorry, Robert. I'm just copying a lot of yours. um, but I think for me, the biggest thing would be like I don't really have like a condensed way to put it, but just the understanding that we're gonna play for our story. You know what I mean? Like we have an audience with the podcast, but we are making these choices out of game sometime. You know what I mean? Like sometimes when we'll have a when there's like a character situation coming up, like maybe a rivalry between PCs, out of game we might address that and be like, okay, so how do we expect this to pan out? You know what I mean? Because if it gets too heated in a recording based setting, it just gets nasty, you know? So sometimes we'll even it's okay. Some people feel like that can be inauthentic, but I think since you're friends, the most authentic thing is to approach each other as friends and ask like, okay, where is this going before this gets hostile or upsetting? Like, it's cool that your characters have some friendly competition, but like, what's that gonna look like? Where's the cap there? Like, make sure they don't roll initiative against each other. You know what I mean? Like, where's the line? Asking those questions. I guess just asking questions would be my thing. As a GM and as a player, I just like to ask questions.
Yeah, I think it's common. The common pillars are communicating, and everybody's there to play the game and have fun. So it's a group thing, not like so the DM is part of it. Um, and listen, share the spotlight. Let the person have their moment. You'll get yours. It's not going to always be about you. So, um, yeah.
It's important to remember that it's not a competition.
Totally. And I also really do like listening. That's a good one. That's a good.
Sorry, I should make sure we had one person speaking before I spoke. I'm so sorry, guys. Um, my big three are communicate with each other because one, we can't get anything done unless we know what everyone's goals are. Two, respect everyone how you want to be treated. I actually, unfortunately, had to kick a player from my table before due to them literally throwing a chair at another player and trying to attack myself. So, yeah, respect is a big one. And third is please, please, I don't care. I don't care how mad you are or how upset you are. There's other ways to communicate than to disrespect each other. Just just walk out of the room if you guys need to calm down and just then come back in. I think tolerance would be that, like having that level of tolerance to know, hey, this is what's going on. This is how I'm going to handle it, but I need to walk out. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and that kind of segues nicely into my next question was how when issues occur, how do you typically address those in a meaningful way where you can all move forward together as a group?
I mean, we're just communication is going to be the word of the day, but
Yeah.
I think it's really important to have, especially because most of those conflicts I actually find come between player and GM. In my experience, maybe that's different for other people. So I always find it really important. Find a third party. Maybe it's not even someone in the game, just someone who can be neutral and just facilitate a good conversation because a lot of times when feelings are running high or tensions are up, just having the two people who are having an issue just sit down and try and communicate doesn't always work. So just having someone who can say, let's step back and like take a break from this talk, just sitting down, why are we upset at each other? Like, I think it's really important, like, have one person talk, the other person can't, then the other person talk, the other person can talk, just so they can get everything out and then start a dialogue about what is like the issue, how can we resolve this, what's like the easiest way for us to get through this. But I think third party and just like really listening to each other is like the big keys for me.
Yeah. Anyone have anything to add?
Sometimes, um, sorry, sometimes you just sometimes disputes have to end in either we can get along or the person somebody has to separate from the group. I found that out sadly during that incident. And he's trying to picking this back up from that. They try to rejoin the group, and unfortunately, we feel for everyone's safety that's not a good idea.
Extremely understandable.
I think that's very fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to think about the fact that not everyone is right for every table. Like some people enjoy different games to others, and that's okay. That doesn't just because you started playing with this person doesn't mean you have to be for the rest of your time gaming. Some people just don't vibe with certain games or certain groups, and so just being honest with each other, making sure it's not personal, and it's just, are you having fun? Are we being respectful?
It's going to take some time to find that group that you play 20 years with.
I would. I'd also like to throw out there, like, Rome wasn't built in a day. Like, these conversations. And this might just be anxious me. There's this need to, like, when something goes awry, to, like, okay, I need to solve it right now. We need to get back to it so that tomorrow everything's fine. All my friends are still my friends. I need to get this figured out right this second, right now, have this conversation right now. No, you know what I mean? You got to step back a little bit from yourself and realize, like, maybe I do need a day. Maybe the other person needs a day to just, like, sometimes you just get mad and you don't know why. Sometimes you're just mad, and saying, like, okay, we're both clearly upset. Let's take a day, find what we're upset about, and let's come back with a bit of a clearer head. That's hard. That's really hard, especially when you're with someone who does not like drawn out conflict. But if you think about it as you're doing it for the other person and for yourself, it does help.
Yeah, if you have a conflict with anybody in the group and you find yourself strictly reacting, then you need to stop and take a breather and step away from the table and come back to it. But come back to it, address it, try to figure out if there's a middle ground, if one person needs to make amends. And hopefully you guys can talk and work it out. But yeah, if all you're doing is reacting, you're not going to get anywhere because that just feeds on itself and snowballs and gets worse.
Yeah, once you start becoming super defensive, it's very hard to recover and have a productive conversation after that. So, kind of bringing it back to like Noor's incident, where when things get physical, we're not going to focus on that, but I'm using that as an example of a boundary. Like, how far are you willing to go for some of these players during certain incidents to bring them back to the table? Like, where is the line drawn? Obviously, throwing tables and chairs, that's a line. But is there a line before that that some of
Oh
you are
yes.
not willing to?
Yeah, if there's raised voices and cross shouting and vulgarities being thrown around, obviously it's escalating beyond what anybody's comfortable with. It's not stop. Just stop right there, back up, and let's cool off.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me there's other than maybe throwing chairs at people, there's two kind of like issues that would really be a big deal. Like one is being like angry and like disputes that are more person to person than character to character, right? Like not keeping it in the game. And so for that, I would say it's more just maybe we should pause the game until the people who are having a disagreement or upset each other can sort that out, because it's not because of the game. Or if it is because of the game, then we shouldn't keep playing, because that's just going to worsen it. So let's resolve this and then get back to this thing so we can have fun with it. The other one that I could see is not respecting people or their boundaries. And that one is a lot more serious for me. So, for instance, if someone X cards something, or if in the pre kind of session 0 talks about something they're not comfortable exploring in this campaign, and then somebody ignores or breaks that boundary, that's a very serious, like, hold the session. We need to talk about that. We need to make sure that that is understood. And if you can't respect those boundaries, then you can't be in my game. Uh, and I'm sure we'll end up talking about safety cards more later in the panel, but definitely I think those are kind of the big two for me.
I didn't know what the X card was when I first started game mastering, so I was just like, okay, guys, if you guys don't feel comfortable with something, just say I'm done, and then we're like, okay, let's change the subject. And I think that's actually how the incident started, because somebody was like, I wanted to finish this, and I said no. So my thing is respect people's boundaries, and I will respect yours. And also, pronouns are there for respect people's pronouns. That's one of the big things at my table also. I've had incidents where people refuse to respect and respect that somebody else is transgender and start calling them by their birth, by their dead name, basically. That's and I had to. That was a very awkward conversation for our parties, but it was something that was taken care of.
That's something I will never understand, why people do that. Sorry.
Honestly,
Totally.
As a transgender person, I don't know. Just
And yeah, that just goes in respect. Like, for instance, I had a player, like, one of those things that, like, they said the R word, and I said, like, after the session, because I didn't really notice it until one of the players brought it up to me, because I was GMing, so I was like in that flow, which sometimes also you don't notice when like certain things happen or people don't speak out. And so I'm sure we'll also get to post session talks are also super important. So I had a player bring it up to me, and then I approached the player and was like, listen, I understand that this is not something you probably realized or maybe thought of as inappropriate, but it 100% is. And if it happens again, I don't think you can play with me anymore. So definitely, you know, letting people know when they have crossed a boundary or done something wrong is super important, because otherwise they can't possibly fix it.
As an older DM, I have made those mistakes just out of what I grew up comfortable with. And I have apologized and made amends. Unfortunately, I drove one player away from our table. And that still tears me up a little bit, but I have used the R word and realized, no, can't say stuff like that. It's not right. And I'm learning and I'm trying. And I'm trying to be inclusive to everybody. So I'm not making excuses for what I'm done. I'm just trying to change it.
Yeah, and that's okay. I think for those of us that are a little bit older, we did grow up in a different kind of environment, especially like I grew up in the South, and oh boy, but recognizing those issues and trying to internalize that and be better for the people around you, I think is, as long as you're trying, that's okay. Did you want to add anything, B?
oh, I think just simply put, like, I think I just have to echo all. Can I just say all of the above?
Yeah, sure.
And just echo with my players are really good. I love my players. I love the crew at the Frostwalkers, mostly because we started playing because we're friends. You know what I mean? Like, we started a podcast with our friends and not the other way around. And I think that's helped us to be really kind of in sync at the table, you know? Like, understanding things, being able to. Sometimes sometimes another player will pick up on a character's, like, feeling before the PC who's running the character, just because we know each other, you know? And so a lot of those issues I've been lucky enough not to deal with, but playing with other people, running one shots in our server, those are always things that I'm very, like, trying to keep aware of. And it is sometimes hard when you're in that flow, like Robert talked about, you know? But I think for me, the biggest thing is, like, if someone else is not having fun and it's your fault, you've just committed the biggest atrocity you could commit in a game.
Yeah, that is a huge issue because we're all here to have fun. Like, no one's here to be angry or ruin anyone's day. It's all about, like, let's get together and have a good time.
It's right there. It's a game.
Yeah.
Games are there for fun. Try not to forget that. That's all.
All right. And so we mentioned a couple of things, and you alluded to it, Robert, the X card. There's a couple of other things, but what sort of techniques do you guys employ to handle situations that might be uncomfortable, or, just general etiquette that you like to adhere to?
For sure. So for me personally, I do a lot of streaming. So I'm playing usually with people I've either never played with or only known for maybe a year or less. So for me, there's like three cards that I use. The main one is the X card. The X card is I'm no longer comfortable with this. Stop the scene. I want to move on. Cut fade to black. So whether that is in person, you can just hold up your hands or text someone, but in like online, we just use like Zoom or Discord chat, right? That's the X card. Just no more. We also use the N card, which is we are starting to get uncomfortable territory. It's not an X, but I'm not. But it could be just as almost a warning of like, hey, this is something that could get very uncomfortable very quickly. And then the last one, which I think is almost one of the most important ones and is sometimes more of a player to player tool, is the O card. So an O is just you send an O question mark if you feel like or you're worried that somebody might not be having a good time or might start to be getting upset and might need to like move on or something just in case. So you just send an O question mark, and if they're all good, they just and that one's just you could do like you could sign to them, whatever, and as long as they just give you an O back or maybe a longer explanation. But it's just all about making sure that if people feel uncomfortable, they have the tools to express that without just derailing the game. So that can, like, for instance, online is actually really great for this kind of thing because you can just put it in whatever chat you all group chat you all have, just DM me as the GM, right? There's lots of different tools at my tables at all times to stop or slow down what is going on if you're not comfortable.
Very well put. So I knew the X and the N. I actually really wasn't super aware of the O card functionality and, you know, the uses of that as more of a player to player. Like, are we all okay with this situation? It's really nice that you can check in with everybody to make sure you're not broaching any sensitive topics or anything like that before getting into it, rather than having to bail out once we everyone realizes, oh, this is not okay.
I wish I would have known about the O card sooner. I would never thought of that.
I wrote the explanation down. Like, I love that so much.
There we go. I'm glad I could spread the O card around because I personally didn't even discover it as one of my very good friends who I stream with a lot. But yeah, it's all those three I think are really important. And like to be honest, and especially with my like regular game IGM on stream, we don't use them a lot, and that's okay. It's the fact that they are there.
I hadn't even heard of any of those until right now. So, I've when playing with new people, I'll do like a session zero. And it's like, what subjects are completely off the books? We have a zombie survival horror stream that we do every Sunday. And Crimson has said, no hurting kids. I said, no hurting kids. Okay, that's number one. That's her full stop.
Yeah.
That is one of my big ones as well. Like that's one of the main reasons I get along with Crimson.
And she's got an orphanage full of kids there. I would never do anything to them. I like living.
Oh, sorry. I would say there's I think Monty Cook Games is their name. They created a whole free document that has all of like conversation pieces about this, and also like a checklist that has some common things that can be, concerning for players. And the idea is at the start of your game, either you print them out or you just send, a PDF version of them to your players and just be like, hey, if any of these are things you do not want to have in the game, let me know. And I've done that, and I don't know. I think it's just super useful to have them like on hand. You know what I mean? Because it's easy. It's easy to say something and be like, "I'll remember that." No, you won't. Having paper copies is just great.
For sure. And one of the most valuable things with the Monty Cook PDF, because I've used it a lot in different campaigns, is it's really hard when you just open up. I've found recently I've kind of realized I haven't done it the best, where I used to just kind of say, what's people's lines and veils? Where a line, by the way, is just a hard no, please no, like no hurting kids, and a veil is more like maybe like a certain type of gore grosses you out too much, you don't want to deal with it, like too much vivid description of that. So that's like a volume veil. Whereas sending people like the Monty Cook PDF, which has like all these different topics where that you can say is good, shaky, or no thank you at all, is it gives you a framework to say, you makes you actually think about these things, as having to like delve back into your mind, like what am I uncomfortable with. It gives people just like, okay, am I comfortable with this, and then once they're through each little section, there's a little section that says, is there anything else that wasn't covered here? And so by the time they've done that document, usually by the end of that, I found people are like, oh, and you know what, I thought about this while I was filling out like this section, so I'm going to put it down here, and boom. And then, just like B said, you have it physically so you can reference back to it and make sure you don't do anything that's going to make people uncomfortable.
Yeah, I was not even aware that that was a document.
Right, and it's free. I will put a link in somewhere if people want it. I can put it
I
in
was going
the
to say, I
panel
was
chat.
about to put a link into the panel question.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, throw that out there so
You
that
can take. You can do it. I'm fine.
For me, I'm kind of just like I had put out a honest consent form for when I do like one shots on charity streams and stuff like that I give to my players. This time for DralaCon, I didn't have time to make one, unfortunately. So I sat down with my players and said, "Hey, this is what I can offer you guys. Is not going to be in the game. No harm to children, no harm to animals. Um, like basically all the main stuff that I don't feel comfortable with in general as a player or as a storyteller. What else do I add onto this list?" And no one else told me anything until afterwards, and they're like, "Hey, you never said asks us for this." And I'm like, "Okay, what can I do?" Basically, I have a pre and post one. What do you not want in, and how can I make the situation better afterwards if I did mess up?
Yeah, I think that kind of leads also into communication a bit. That's, like you said, the word of the day. Everything is going to boil down to communication. You know, what what is everybody comfortable with? Just being able to have that conversation with people is so important to making sure that everyone has a good time, which is bottom line. Okay. So, kind of changing topics a little bit, I know that recent events is an issue that has come up, but how has that kind of affected everyone's games? I know, Robert, you stream a lot, so a lot of your stuff is digital anyway. But what has been like the biggest change between the games that you guys have noticed? And this isn't really super etiquette, so it's kind of more of a free form thing.
For sure. I think a lot of people are finding that they have to transition gaming groups online now. And so there's obviously a lot of trials and tribulations that can happen with that. Um, so I think the main thing is that it's for me especially made me realize how like at the end of the day, what's important is the people around the table, right? So, if all I can do for maybe a roll 20 session is just, you know, have the dice and I know the stat blocks and there's no map and it's just theater of the mind online and all that. That's fine as long as everyone's having a good time and playing together. It's just at the end of the day, there's all this like stuff you can add on to online experiences, but at the end of the day, what's important is the people around the table. So just making sure that everyone's having a good time is still so important. Keeping that like personal connection in these times is really great. Good to have that. So
I think transitioning to online with the quarantine has required a lot of trust and honesty between the players and the DM, more so than sitting around the table. Um, you have to believe your players; they have to believe you, and there's no other way other than to say you have to earn a level. There has to be a level of trust between both parties.
For homebrew games, that's kind of hard to transition online, especially when you're not using a traditional style. Like instead of just using like a d20, we have like almost cards that aren't really in a system already because my friend created his own game. So it's kind of like, okay, there's no way we can run this online unless we're actually there on Zoom and he's holding up all the cards like, do you need this card or this card or and then with me visually impaired, I can't see or anything on Zoom. So it's been more of a let's just wait till quarantine's over.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
sadly,
a fair
there's
choice. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut in.
no. Go ahead.
Just that's a fair choice to make for your table. Saying that, hey, we can't. This online isn't working for our group. Let's just give it a pause. And there's stuff you can do as a party, if you will, that doesn't require playing the game. Like one of my favorite experiences I've had throughout this whole experience was we played I think Cards Against Humanity online, but we did it entirely in our campaign characters, like the answers they would give as opposed to the answers we the players would give, and it was so much fun.
that sounds like so much fun. Yeah.
It does sound like fun, but I already know my character would not play Cards Against Humanity to save their life.
Hmm.
And for me, I think so. I have a regular game with just some friends right now. It's not a podcast or anything right now or stream. And so we finished like a long-term campaign that I've been running recently, and we're gonna start another one soon. But in the meantime, we just been playing one shots of different systems we wanted to play, some one-page RPGs, some really just fun stuff, and then sometimes we just play Jackbox or just hang out and chat, and that's okay. Sometimes that's all people have like the energy for or feel up to, and I feel like when you're playing a regular game of like D&D or any big RPG where it's like this long running campaign, there's almost this obligation to play every week or every time you have set up. And if people aren't all feeling it, if you're not up to it, that's okay. There's no, you're not going to be in trouble if you just skip a day and just do something to relax yourselves and still have fun. Because again, what's important is you all have fun and you are just being friends. So I think that's something really important that we kind of realize is that we don't always have to like run a game. We can just have fun and be friends.
Yeah.
And I just want to real quick just piggyback by saying, like, I think for a lot of people, especially like the younger people coming into the TTRPG scene, the biggest draw is the role play. You know, like for a lot of people, a big draw is the role play, and so a lot of people might feel like what's interesting is there are ways to facilitate that role play without the use of D&D or whatever game system you're using. Like I said, playing Cards Against Humanity in character was a really fun time. Or like even Jackbox could be done in character. You know what I mean? Like any maybe it's because I come from a background of like doing improv comedy and stuff, but like anything can be done as your PC because it's all about getting into their head. That's the joy of it, you know? So even if you guys are just hanging out, if someone's like, "Oh man, I really wanted to like have this conversation between these two characters that we won't get to do," what if in your campaign your party decides to take an off day and play Truth or Dare? Like
I'm
that's
stealing some of these ideas.
Right?
like Truth or Dare in character is one thing that happened in one of my campaigns, and it was so fun. We had an episode of campaign 1 where the party had a sleepover, and the only rolls we did for like how good the cookies we made were and stuff like that, and like did someone bring the right DVD, you know, or just things to that effect. And it was probably one of the most important episodes we played post mortem because so much about their backstories came out, so much about their like interactions came out of that episode, just because we gave the party, if you will, a place where there was no fight, there was no adventure, just them being them. And I don't know, like I want
Keeping the wave of skeletons at bay as more begin to climb up the sides.
Mm.
Time to build a bond. And if you're constantly fighting, it's really hard to do that. But that was awesome. Sorry, but we are kind of coming up towards the end of our time. So I wanted to ask one final question. Anything that you didn't touch on that you maybe feel like you wanted to hit?
Decompress after games. Like just take as it could even just be 10 minutes. Just talk with your friends, like talk about the session, talk about like the emotional moments, check in on everyone, like how you feeling, especially if it was a more dramatic scene or a day, like just check on each other and just talk with your friends, because if someone had an issue or if someone's not feeling well, or even just to celebrate the session you had, just it does wonders for making sure that people walk away still happy and not feeling bad.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. All right. Well, how about we outro all of ourselves? Let's go in reverse order and start with you, Vinny, this time.
Hey. Once again, I am Vinny the Troll with Real Women of Gaming. Check us out Sunday nights, little plug. Malhaven. We stream every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Well, this is 6. Crimson will kill me. Von Real edit that, I guess. I don't know. That's all I got.
I'm Robert the Jim at Robbie Rolling on Twitter. I'm part of the Not Quite Heroes podcast. Woo! We have a live show in an hour here at this con, and then we release podcast episodes every other Monday. Check us out on Twitter at NQH Podcast. We're lots of fun. I'm also part of lots of different streams. So every Wednesday, I GM a 5e game on Valdrina's channel, Revenge of the Gith. I voice plants every session because I have 2 druids. And then every Saturday, I play For We Have Sinned on Nerd League Gaming. It's a Monster Hearts 2 game. That's one that definitely is, you need a post session wind down because it's super dramatic, intense. Lots of great role play there. So that's me.
Hey guys, I'm Jay. I'm from Adriarch Studios. Definitely check out our table here in the con and follow us on Patreon. Our Patreon launched about 10 minutes ago, which is kind of why you saw me like looking a little confused. Plus, there's a bunch of toys that just got thrown across the room. I'm so sorry. Um, but yeah, definitely find us on Patreon, find us on Discord. We now have Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and I think we're getting a Tumblr today. I'm not sure. I have to double check, but definitely find us on social media. We are now live on all of that. And check out Stacy at Feeding Beginnings. Come to our table and ask more questions.
And I'm B. Like I said, you can find me doing stuff with the Frostwalkers. We're a 5e campaign that is hesitant to call ourselves homebrew because we use a lot of stuff from 5e casually, but then also just a lot of our own stuff. The new campaign just started. Episode 5 is coming out tomorrow, so real good time to catch up on the new campaign if that's what you're if that's something. Feel free to message me or just stop me around the con if you want to either join the server or just like hear more about where we're at. And I also do stuff with my friend Hallie. She does the Terrible Party charity live streams, and I'm going to be doing a Dragon Age one shot in that July run. So see you in July for that. I don't know Dragon Age. Send help.
Don't worry, I've got you. I'm running the VTM one.
Oh my gosh.
That'll be fun. Well, I am Noctur with the Nerd Asylum. I'll say it more confidently this time, Joe. I am in our Always Cloudy in Exandria game as Tucker, who is a southern farm boy because I grew up in the South. This panel was awesome. I learned so much. Like, it was great. And I hope everyone else learned a lot too. Thank you all for participating. Thank you for viewing if you did. And I guess that's going to be it for us.